Hey, what's up, everybody? Ralph here. So I came across this article in the New York Times in regards to the Navient $1.7 billion deal, settlement deal that they had to give some of these borrowers. And for those that aren't aware of what happened, Navient was asked to settle, $1.7 billion for certain practices when it came to certain borrowers. So some borrowers are going to be able to get their loans canceled, and others are just going to receive a couple few hundred bucks. So when it comes to this article in the New York Times, it talks about some people that aren't getting this relief, because you gotta remember, some people are getting their loans canceled and some people are going to receive a couple hundred bucks, but there's also others that actually went through the same issues with Navient but won't be getting any relief. And this article talks about it, goes through the stories and some of the stories of the people that are going through this that won't be getting any relief. So it's an interesting article. I'm gonna just go through it real quick and let's hear what they have to say. So it says, after years of struggling to make payments that hardly put a dent in the loans she took out to attend now defunct art school, Victoria Linston saw a glimmer of hope. A deal last month between 39 states and Navient, a student lender giant accused of unfairly ensnaring borrowers like her, would wipe away $1.7 billion in private student loans. Then she read the fine print. People like her who made their payments on time were disqualified from relief. So even though the prosecutor said Navient had made predatory loans to hundreds of thousands of borrowers, it knew it couldn't afford it. And for them, the settlement covered only about 66,000 who were in default. Those who managed to make the payments on the deceptive high-interest debt, mostly attended the for-profit schools that left them with worthless degrees, would just have to keep paying. So basically, what happened was there's a lot of people that actually made on-time payments to these loans. And because they made on-time payments, technically they didn't qualify for the debt relief. So basically the people that qualified were, if you missed I think 7 consecutive payments or so, if you were put in certain type of forbearances, you qualified for this cancellation, this debt relief. But the people that made on-time payments, never missed a payment, they don't qualify. And which is kind of messed up, because they made payments on time, because they made on-time payments, because they were doing the right thing, because they were able to afford it, they didn't qualify for this relief. So, that's just one of her stories. That's one of the stories. So she goes on to say, "I was stunned," said Miss Linson, 57, who sent Navient about $500 every month, sometimes skipping groceries to do it. After graduating from Brooks Institute, a for-profit art school. These art schools, like a lot of people get into these art schools that just don't produce the degrees or the income that they're hoping, you get caught up in a rough situation. So art school in California that abruptly folded in 2016. She has struggled to put her degree to use and now works as a digital marketer director in Muncie, Indiana, where her paycheck stretches further. "It's incredibly unfair," she said. If you were defrauded by your school, you were defrauded, and your loans should be released whether you have paid them or not. The settlement resolved nearly a decade of state investigations into the role Navient, the lender and loan servicer that was long been a linchpin in educational lending market, played in a bleak cycle of vulnerable students, dubious for-profit schools, and taxpayers' money. State prosecutors said Navient, which did business as Sallie Mae until 2014, was willing to give private loans to borrowers it knew couldn't pay them back because they were a money-losing lure for a far more profitable product, which was the federal student loans. So what Navient was doing was they were issuing out private loans in hoping to get these federal loans. They knew when it comes to that, they knew the private loans were probably, they weren't going to recover all of them, but they issued private loans so they can get to the real moneymaker, which was the federal backed loans, which is where a lot of people, get caught up in. They get these federal backed loans because it's backed by the government and you have to pay it. And if you don't pay it, then they'll say if you're in default, they can just enter your bank account, so they can sue you and take away, checks or, social security checks, whatever means of income that you have, they can go into your bank accounts and get that. So they know that's guaranteed, that they know if you guys don't make payments on those things, they can access your accounts to get their money, which makes you liable to pay for that money until your debt is paid. So they know that. So they are basically issuing these private loans in order to just get the real money maker, which was the federal backed loans, which is crazy. So starting in early 2000s, Navient and the schools it worked with used the private loans to fill gaps for students who relied on government-backed loans for Navient to pay the bulk of their tuition. All right, so they basically gave them the federal back loans, and if they needed a few extra for, if they've maxed out their federal loan, then Navient would also tack on private loans, to also help students be able to pay for school. So even if the private loans weren't repaid, the federal guaranteed loans were bulletproof revenue for Navient. So I'm gonna read that again. Even if the private loans weren't repaid, the federally guaranteed loans were bulletproof revenue for Navient. And the more borrowers it attracted, the more money it made. One internal Navient email cited in court documents described the private loans as a baited hook to reel in more government-backed loans. See, and that's the thing. When you got these government-backed loans, this is what they do. People take advantage of it. They know that's guaranteed money coming from the government. You got companies like practices like Navient that's going to take advantage of it, and the people that are going to get screwed are the borrowers. So Navient began to wind down the tactic only after it and other lenders were engulfed in a series of scandals over their practices. The strategy largely ended after the federal government started lending directly to students in 2010. Interesting. So both Navient and the states have called the settlement a win. Navient did not acknowledge wrongdoing and avoided lengthy court battles, while the prosecutors trumpeted the $1.7 billion in forgiven debt. But Navient never expected to repay much of the money. The true value of the debt it forgave, the company told its investors, was about $50 million. So and then Navient didn't have to compensate borrowers who stayed current on their payments. They will have to keep paying. Navient often for a decade or more for private loans that state officials said should never have been made. It feels like such betrayal. We were penalized for paying our debts, said Jacqueline Strauss, 39, who attended the Art Institute of California's campus in San Diego, where she lives. She pays Navient $600 a month toward a $23,000 balance for her own private loans, and those she co-signed for her mother, who attended ITT Technical Institute. Both schools collapsed after state and federal crackdown. So you can see how wrong that is. Like you get these institutions, these for-profit schools, and you get these degrees, and you take on these large amount of loans. And like I said, everyone knew what they were signing up for. People need to do a better, research on like the kind of income that these degrees will net them. But a lot of people you can see are taking advantage of it. They think they get the degree, they'll be able to pay this, and they'll get a good job that can pay for this debt. But usually that's not the case. And then you see some of these institutions fall, and they fold, and they go out of business, and the person that's stuck holding the bag are the borrowers. So you got schools like Art Institute, Chain, and ITT Tech, big players in the industry with history of subpar outcomes for students, were crucial to Navient's strategy. So they were going after people. They knew exactly what they were doing. The longstanding government policy, the so-called 90-10 rule, requires for-profit schools that receive federal student loans to get at least 10% of their funding elsewhere. The intention is to force schools to prove they can attract other sources of support. By using its private loans to help schools cover the gap, Navient ensured a steady supply of borrowers for its government-backed loans. Their ability to repay the private loans was immaterial. One especially risky set of loans had a default rate that peaked 87%. It's crazy, according to Pennsylvania Attorney General. But the number of loans Navient made to those borrowers swelled to 54,000 in 2006 from 706 to 2000. Some of the schools even subsidized Navient's losses. If the borrower can create a condensation on a mirror, they need to get this loan this year, Thomas Fitzpatrick, Navient's former chief executive, said in 2007 meeting, according to court filings. Although Navient made hundreds of thousands of private loans as part of their strategy, it's not clear how many borrowers are still repaying the lender. Some have paid off to refinance their loans, and Navient declined to say how many loans it still holds from that period. So you got Matthew Revizo, 32, took government-backed and private loans in 2007 and financed his bachelor's degree in graphic design. So get this, he borrowed $130,000 to attend the New England Institute of Art, part of a chain then owned by Education Management, which went bankrupt in 2018 after facing state and federal charges over its recruiting tactics. So he borrowed $130,000 for graphic design. So, I mean, look at 100,000. We all know graphic design, it doesn't get you that much money out in the market. And it just sucks because you don't have to pay that, right? So Mr. Reviso, who lives in Natick, Massachusetts, picked the school because it promised that employers were eager to hire its graduates, but every application ended in rejection. One recruiter finally leveled with him and said the school has a terrible reputation and Mr. Reviso's skills couldn't get him hired. So basically, you went to school, you took on a $130,000 debt for nothing, right? So he was floored. I had a degree, I worked hard for it. He found work in an unrelated field, which a lot of people do. A lot of people get degrees and then they find work that's something unrelated to their degree. And so he found work in an unrelated field. He's a digital production specialist, but his six-figure debt was oppressive and double-digit interest rates, on his private loans stifled his progress. 4 years ago, he refinanced his two most expensive Navient loans with another lender. He kept the most affordable one, $13,000 at nearly 11% interest. The $1,100 he pays each month for his private loans is roughly equal to his rent. For years, Mr. Reviso worked 7 days a week, adding evenings and weekend shifts at a supermarket to his daily job. He now makes enough to skip his second job, but he's still holding off on medical care he needs but can't afford. So being excluded from Navient settlement was infuriating Mr. Reviso. I know people who defaulted and who are now past it. They don't have the debt. It rolled off of their credit score and they can move on with their lives while I'm still spinning my wheels. So now you got Eileen Connor, the director of Project or Predatory Loan Lending, which represents former students for nonprofit schools, said the states had to use a familiar playbook in reaching the settlements. Let's make this a big splashy announcement that creates the impression in the public's mind and sadly in the minds of people who have these loans. The relief is here. The relief is here, she said, but when you get into the detail, it's not actually helping many people. The state official who struck the deal stand by it. Rob Bonta, the Attorney General of California, said the settlement focused on borrowers who were hurt the most by the bad practices. They were the most distressed and the most in need. The deal punishes a bad actor that sent a lot of bad loans in the student universe, said Mr. Bonta, whose state was one of the five that led the settlement. So basically, the people that got the relief were obviously the people that couldn't make payments. Even though people that could make the payments, even though this was putting a lot of stress on them, they obviously didn't feel like, they should be able to get their loans canceled because obviously they were able to make their loans. So, obviously they're not impacted as much as those that weren't able to make their loans. So, I mean, obviously the person if you're someone that was making payments on your loan, it's crazy that, it's obviously unfair, but, that's a tough thing you got to deal with. If you're making payments, they're just going to say, obviously you have the money to make the payments, so keep on making them. All right, so borrowers who were covered by the deal, generally those who were overdue for at least 7 consecutive months before June 20th, 2021, were elated. Their remaining Navient private loans, averaging nearly $26,000, will be canceled. I'm going to sleep better, one borrower, Ashley Harden, said. But borrowers who were left out have few options. They can seek to have federal loans eliminated through a program called a borrower's defense prepayment, which can wipe out loans to students those schools defrauded them. Some defunct schools cited in Navient's settlement, including ITT and the Maranello Schools of Beauty, are already covered by the program. Education Department officials added a chain that's still in operation, DeVry University, to the list on Wednesday, and more claims to be approved soon. All right. So, and then you got another one. So this is another story. So Miss Lindsay, who still owes $70,000 in private loans she took out to attend Brooks Institute for-profit in California that abruptly folded in 2016, said she hoped to sue Navient. She has kept paying her private loan bill because she doesn't want to put her mother, who co-signed for her, on the hook. Otherwise, I would have strategically defaulted. So see, a lot of people would have defaulted, but obviously she co-signed for her, so it didn't make sense. So while her debts hangs on her every financial decision she makes, Navient is now free of the burden, expense, time, and distraction of states' claims, the company said in a statement. The settlement should never have been necessary at all, added Paul Hardwick, a Navient spokesman. A position that these allegations are baseless and without merit has remained unchanged since these cases began 9 years ago. Navient hasn't made federally guaranteed loans for more than a decade, and last year it would stop servicing millions of federal loans on the government's behalf. It focuses now on its booming private loan business. Navient originated $6 billion in private loans, student loans last year, making it country's largest provider. Last month, Navient reported a profit of $717 million for 2021, our most complete and successful year said Jack Ramondi, Navient's chief executive. He added, it was a year that we exceeded all our goals. So clearly they're still making money, doing their thing when it comes to servicing these loans. But obviously you see a lot of people that felt that they've been unfairly taking advantage of Navient. Of course, they signed for these loans. They knew what they're paying for, but you can see how how frustrating it is that you see a group of people that are getting their loans canceled, even though they weren't able to make the payments and they were doing the right things, and they weren't getting, and a set of other people that aren't getting their loans canceled. So that's the struggle, man. That's the thing, man. You got to be careful when you're taking on these loans. You got to make sure, you got to do your research when you're taking on these degrees. You got to make sure that these degrees that you're pursuing are going to net you a very high paying job. And that makes it worth, taking on that debt. But if you're going to get a degree that's going to net you, a $50K job, and you're going to take on a $100,000 debt, the return isn't there. All right, so you got to be careful. Make sure you do the right thing, and hopefully these people can get some resolution. But it's going to be kind of tough. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on this. Make sure to leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and please do not forget to subscribe. All right, so you guys take care and have a good one. Later.